Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Bite-Sized Cybercrime, the podcast where we discuss cybercrimes and cybersecurity news. You may remember back in February I made an episode about the notorious ransomware group LockBit being taken down by law enforcement in a multinational effort. Since then, even more decryption keys for their ransomware have been uncovered, and the group has mostly fizzled out. That is, until they had claimed to have hacked the U.S. Federal Reserve. June 25th, 2024, the LockBit ransomware group, which had previously been one of the most notorious groups before their takedown, claimed to have stolen a huge database with 33 terabytes of banking information containing America's banking secrets from the Federal Reserve. This is a lot of data. The absolute largest hard drive I am aware of existing is 12, maybe 18 terabytes in size. And most large hard drives are still probably going to be around 5. Though for an entity like the Federal Reserve, it makes perfect sense to have this much data, and they likely have a pretty robust array of redundant disks. And I'm sure ransomware groups like LockBit also have quite a considerable amount of storage to store all the data they extort from people, or maybe they're just really good at compressing it. Either way, stealing this amount of data from the Federal Reserve would be a huge comeback after a major fall from grace, and could get LockBit some credibility back. The deadline to leak this data publicly was reached. The Federal Reserve was silent, and so was LockBit for the most part. Surely the Fed, the most powerful economic institution in the US, would have made some kind of comment about the attack, but they didn't. LockBit did claim that they were offered $50,000 by a negotiator and mocked this pitiful amount of money being offered for the banking secrets of America, and eventually, of course, they ended up leaking the data on their site. However, it was immediately obvious that something was not quite right. And that being, this was just not data from the Federal Reserve at all. It was from a random bank called Evolve Bank and Trust, who confirmed that LockBit had indeed obtained data from their systems and are currently investigating the incident, though they didn't really give a timeline for when they were breached and simply offered complimentary credit monitoring and identity theft protections to their impacted customers. Don't get me wrong, this is definitely bad for Evolve Bank and Trust. It's never good when people's sensitive financial information is leaked and they're at risk for identity theft. But this was far from the deep, dark banking secrets of America that were promised from the big, scary ransomware group LockBit. So, what happened? What was the point of all of this? Why lie about hacking the Federal Reserve when you clearly did not and have absolutely no data to back up these claims, even though you're going to have to leak something to prove you actually did it? I always say that ransomware groups are all about money, but in LockBit's case, it's likely a rather desperate attempt to stay relevant after being taken down. LockBit operates on a ransomware as a service model. They develop ransomware and have affiliates actually go out and hack organizations via social engineering, which is tricking people into gaining some kind of access, maybe a password, and also just exploiting vulnerabilities that exist in a system. Then they deploy LockBit's ransomware once their access is sufficient. The affiliates get a cut of the money extorted from the organizations that end up paying out the ransom. And these ransoms can be huge, in the 7 figures for victims of LockBit. So this is considerable for someone who is good at socially engineering, but not good at actually developing their own malware. After LockBit was taken down, affiliates lost a lot of trust in them, and if you don't have affiliates, you don't have money coming in. And this is obviously not ideal. By claiming responsibility for hacking a huge entity like the Federal Reserve, LockBit was trying to prove that they are still a threat to other threat actors around the world and potential affiliates, so that they decided to go with LockBit instead of some other group. The only issue is that they didn't have a leg to stand on. So it's partially for money, but it's also partially just an ego thing. Their ego was bruised and they're trying to build back and show off. A representative from Bleeping Computer, one of my sources, attempted to reach out to the manager of the ransomware group, but was apparently blocked by them. From the beginning, there were doubts that LockBit had managed to ransomware the US Federal Reserve, with VX Underground tweeting that if it did actually happen, it would be DEFCON 2 and the administrators would need to worry about a drone strike. Although a considerable amount of LockBit administrators have been arrested, the group overall is evading US authorities. Not necessarily because we don't know where they are, but because we don't have much jurisdiction where they are. Either way, it's kind of sad to see LockBit lying in such an obvious way, and to me it demonstrates that they are certainly not doing very well at all after the takedown. But what's your take? Maybe this is some kind of bluff for something bigger, though I personally doubt it. Thank you to TechRadar, Bleeping Computer, Cyber News, and Dark Reading for reporting on this case and any updates received. And of course, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Bite-Sized Cybercrime, and until next time, stay secure.